Hi, Jacques. I want to welcome you to Chicago and thank you for your participation.
Thank you so much.
And I want to get an idea of what's your take on this conference?
On the whole conference, well, for one thing, I was very happy to share my thoughts on what took Cabaret to its current situation. Did not participate in the last forum on the future of Cabaret because this is not something I can really talk about. But I was very glad to explain how we got this far, and what Cabaret is in the United States. At the same time, what I found out is how different the Cabaret scene in the United States is from what Cabaret stands for in France. They're very, very, very different. Cabaret in the United States is still very much about the American songbook. Cabaret in France is non-extant almost in terms of venues, and it's also about many different things. Some of it nostalgia, but most of it more current things. And most of it not really about songs, in fact.
Were there some high points from this conference that you...
Well, high points from the conference would be me as a participant gaining so much from the various workshops. And particularly because I'm a jazz singer, not at all a cabaret singer, what I learned from it, what I gained from it mostly is the need to question the way you perform in such a way that you are really communicating with the audience, not just expressing yourself and listening to your own music and listening to other musicians, but also communicating with an audience in such a way that, okay, you're revealing aspects of your personality, but you're also making the audience happy.
Okay. You wrote a book.
I wrote a book
on Cabaret.
Yes, I did. And this book, as I said, this book explains what the current cabaret scenes in the United States is and where it comes from. And from what I've heard again and again in discussions, it is still not clear at all for Americans what they're doing. And they know what they're doing, but they have no idea basically how that relates to Weimar cabaret, to French cabaret. They don't understand really that it is something very specific, that it corresponds to this period, something that was born in the 1980s. That is not at all a continuation of Berlin cabaret. It has nothing to do whatsoever with French cabaret. So it's great to have this conversation. It's great for French participants to be here and the other way around, so that we can look at what is a common thing, of course, the idea of proximity, of an intimacy. But this is about it. That is, yes, there is intimacy in both French. There is no French cabaret, actually, but French performing arts happening in small venues or outside, and American cabaret, what I call New York cabaret or New York style cabaret, which is a very, very specific object. So, again, we're still in the middle of a great misunderstanding. Americans about what they're doing and how it relates to the performing arts as a whole, and how it relates to the word cabaret, which is so... if you just limit the word cabaret to an intimate connection with an audience, everything is cabaret. I'm a teacher. I teach every time I'm doing a class, I'm doing cabaret, because it is an intimate connection, it is a discussion with an audience, it is explaining things, and because I'm explaining things, I'm saying who I am and what my point of view is on life. This is cabaret. Almost anything could be cabaret so long as you're communicating with an audience in an intimate setting.
Do you think this conference was a good start? In terms of moving forward, this 8 days of collaboration between French cabaret performers and American cabaret performers?
It is a great start because it's an eye-opener. It's an eye-opener for the French. The French were very happy. I was afraid that some of them at least would be lost in a world that is so different. We don't know, the French don't know anything about the Great American Songbook. They had no idea coming over here that this sort of cabaret would be, again, so specific. they heard again and again the same sort of things happening in sessions. Every workshop was basically about, okay, how do you convey the meaning of the words in an intimate connection with the audience? How do you express your own point of view on the songs? This is, again, a very limited way of looking at the art of cabaret as a whole. So that was enlightening for the French, because at the same time, working on this very specific art form is very productive in terms of the fine points of communication and so on. So they learned a lot. They really did. The other way around, if only the few performances that were made, let's think of the Blue Velvets, for instance. This was so drastically different from anything that happens on a cabaret stage in the US, that it is an eye-opener as to what cabaret could be about also in this country. And the discussion of tonight about young people being the future of cabaret, doing things that would be drastically different. Well, yes, that is a great idea. That is a great idea. How that translates into facts, and particularly how that translates into an economically valid model, that's a very different question. That is a very different question.
One of the things I've learned in this process, in this year that I've been working on the Cabaret Connection, is that cabaret is many things. It's not just Great American Songbook.
Right.
You know, I think maybe the New York singers are more oriented toward Great American Songbook, but in Chicago, I see a lot of experimentation. I see burlesque, and burlesque combined with music, and I see people going in a lot of different directions.
Oh, I agree. It's just that all the workshops we've seen were centered completely around the Great American Songbook, the old one and the new one, because it is still being developed. Right. And one of the points of my book is exactly that. From this point of view of the Great American Songbook, cabaret develops very much. As I said in my conference, you find rock and roll, you find U2, you find, of course, transvestites, you see a number of things that happen and that could be experimental. But at the same time, the scene is obviously dominated by the Great American Songbook and the way it can be personalized and reinvented. My main thesis in my book is that New York Cabaret is a creative conservatory.
What?
A creative conservatory
Okay.
of American popular music. That is, conservation through creation. Making sure that the Great American Songbooks not only survives, but thrives, that a tradition remains vibrant, not only through interpretation and reinterpretation and reinvention, but also developing the repertoire, writing new songs, and also integrating into the songbook stuff that was written in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and now.
Okay, great. I want to thank you for making the trip over here, for your participation, for your contributions.
That was great. I'm very glad I did it.
And
thank you so much for putting this together. It was extraordinary. It's huge work you did. I'm very thankful.
thank you.
Thank you. Can I get that microphone from you?